You pray more than usual, yet your circumstances do not grow lighter. The illness still progresses, money is still scarce, and the relationship is still strained. You ask for peace, but at night your mind still spins. The things you place before God with such sincerity seem to produce no visible change. And it is precisely that lack of change that confuses you even more than the suffering itself. The disappointment does not arrive with a loud explosion, it comes quietly. You still keep the habit of praying, you still read a few verses of scripture, but a question begins to form inside. Is he listening to me, or am I only comforting myself? You do not want to doubt, yet the prolonged silence makes faith feel heavy. Many people do not leave God because they hate him. They drift away because they are exhausted. Exhausted from waiting for an answer that never comes. Exhausted from appearing strong in front of others while inside they are shaking. Exhausted from hoping and then being disappointed again. Faith rarely collapses in a single day. It slowly erodes when prayers seem to receive no response. The pressure of modern life makes this feeling even clearer. The world teaches us that everything must produce quick results. Work must bring clear rewards. Effort must lead to visible achievement. When we apply that same mindset to prayer, we expect an immediate response. But prayer does not operate like a transaction. In the Garden of Gethsemane, before his arrest and suffering, Jesus prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me." Gospel of Matthew 26-39. It was a very honest request. No detours, no hiding fear. He asked to avoid suffering. That bitter cup was not taken away. The path of the cross still remained. If we judge by our standards, that prayer was not answered in the way one might hope. But in that very moment, something deeper happened. Not the circumstance changing, but obedience and trust being strengthened. This touches directly on a very common pain today. I pray, but nothing changes. That feeling makes us think faith is ineffective. But perhaps the problem lies in how we understand faith. If we see faith as a tool to control outcomes, we will feel disappointed when the results are not what we want. Faith is not a button that makes circumstances turn around. Faith is the decision not to leave God when the circumstances remain the same. When the illness has not healed and you still believe. When opportunity has not arrived and you still pray. When anxiety has not disappeared and you still remain in his presence. That is not weakness, that is maturity. God's silence is often mistaken for absence. But silence does not mean inaction. Very often, he is working at a deeper level we cannot yet see. An attitude being shaped, a patience being formed, a faith becoming less dependent on emotion and results. In seasons like this, what frightens us most is not the external hardship, but the inner loneliness. If God does not answer the way we expect, we fear we are alone. But the story of Jesus shows that the Father's silence did not mean he abandoned the Son. The cross was not removed, but love was never withdrawn. You may not understand why your prayer has not yet been answered. You may not see the purpose of the delay. Yet continuing to pray while circumstances remain unchanged is forming something very real within you: perseverance. A faith not built on emotional excitement, but on choice. The world encourages us to believe only what we can see. Faith invites us to believe even when we cannot yet see. This is not romantic, and it is not comfortable. It requires honesty with pain and the courage to remain. Remaining when things are difficult is far more powerful than believing when everything goes smoothly. When prayer does not change the circumstances, you begin to learn the difference between what you want and what you truly need. Sometimes we ask to escape difficulty, but what we truly need is the strength to walk through it. We ask for a smooth road, yet we are given stronger feet. The long silence may make you doubt, but that same silence also reveals the true foundation of faith. If we believe only when life goes well, that faith is fragile. If we continue to believe when the results have not appeared, that faith begins to deepen. When prayer does not change the circumstances, the question is no longer whether God is doing something or not. The question is whether you will remain with Him or not. And sometimes, in a world that constantly demands instant results, the simple fact that you still kneel down and whisper, "I still believe," is already something greater than any miracle you are waiting for. You wait for a clear change, but the first thing that changes is you. The circumstances remain the same, the problem is still there, but the way you respond begins to shift. Before, you panicked. Now, you slow down. Before, you collapsed the moment bad news arrived. Now you still feel the pain, but you do not fall apart. It is not a loud miracle, but it is a real movement. Many times you asked God to move the mountain in front of you. You wanted the illness to disappear, the debts to be erased, the relationship to be restored immediately. But instead of moving the mountain, He teaches you to climb it. He does not make the road easier, but He makes you stronger. That change happens slowly, almost unnoticed in each passing day. Yet when you look back, you see that you are no longer as weak as before. You once prayed for all anxiety to disappear. In reality, anxiety does not vanish overnight. But you begin to learn not to let it control you. You may still have sleepless nights, but you are no longer as hopeless as before. You begin to understand that peace does not mean the absence of problems, but having a steady foundation in the middle of them. When you ask for a clear answer, what you receive instead is time to wait. That waiting frustrates you, but it also matures you. You learn not to depend entirely on immediate results. You learn to live with unanswered questions without losing faith. The cross did not disappear from the story of Jesus. The path of suffering still had to be walked. Yet the person on the cross changed history. If circumstances determined everything, the cross would have been a failure. But what happened there became a victory in another way, deeper and more enduring. This reshapes the way you see difficulty. Perhaps the problem you face is not removed because it is becoming a tool that shapes you. Not every trial comes to destroy you. Some come to restructure you. They expose your weaknesses, but they also awaken strengths you have never used before. You realize you are more patient than before. You no longer react as impulsively as you once did. You depend less on the rise and fall of emotions. Those changes did not come from comfortable circumstances, but from being forced to face what you never wanted. Pressure reveals depth. God's silence in this season can easily feel like abandonment. But if you look carefully, you are still being sustained in another way. You have not completely collapsed. You still rise each morning. You still continue to pray, even when you feel nothing special. That itself is a sign of an invisible support. Faith slowly shifts from emotion to decision. Before, you believed when things went well. Now, you believe even when you see no immediate benefit. That kind of faith is not loud or emotional, but it is stronger. It does not depend on being answered, but on not walking away. When circumstances do not change, you are forced to change the way you see them. You no longer ask only, "When will this end?" You begin to ask, "Who am I becoming through this?" The second question is not easy to answer, but it opens a path toward deeper growth. You once thought that if God loved you, He would remove every difficulty. Now you begin to understand that love is not always shown by removing trials. Sometimes love is shown by walking with you through them and turning them into a place of formation. Some inner strengths can only be formed under pressure: perseverance, humility, the ability to feel compassion for others who are suffering. If everything were always smooth, these things would rarely appear. It is often the seasons without answers that make you deeper and more real. You still may not see what you have been asking for. The illness may not be gone. Your work may still feel unstable. The relationship may still not be restored. But you are no longer the person you were a year ago. You think differently, react differently, and believe differently. The greatest change may not be happening in your outer circumstances. It may be happening in your inner structure. A foundation is being reinforced. A new way of living is forming. You are no longer as easily shaken by every storm. When God does not change the circumstances, it does not mean He is doing nothing. Perhaps He is working in the place that matters most, your heart. And if one day the circumstances truly change, you may realize that you have already been prepared to step into that moment as a different person, steadier, deeper, and less dependent on outcomes than before.